When you listen to Trump's words as well as his actions, it's pretty clear that he fully expected Iran to go just like Venezuela did.
He said there is a plan. He points to Venezuela as a template.
We have a formula that's been very good so far, and I think it'll continue to be good.
But Iran isn't Venezuela. In fact, other than oil, a corrupt government, and a visceral contempt for the USA, they have almost nothing in common. Now, I'm going to explain those differences to you, but it's worth acknowledging that you don't actually have to be an expert to know what I'm about to tell you. In fact, many of you are going to be nodding away as I tell you something that you probably already know. That Trump wouldn't be the first US president not to know much about the world outside the USA. The real story here isn't that Trump didn't know this. It's what happened to the plethora of experts, strategists, and policy advisors that would have known that simply copying and pasting the Venezuela plan onto Iran obviously wasn't going to work. Were they ignored? Were they overruled? Or were they simply no longer in the room when Trump was making his decision?
And he said, it's going to work very easily. It's going to work like it did in Venezuela.
But first, let's look at the facts. Why didn't Iran capitulate like Venezuela? Now, we obviously don't know how unpopular the Iranian regime actually is, but some independent surveys have estimated that as many as 81% of Iranians do not want the current system of government. Now, remarkably, that would actually make the Ayatollah far less popular than Maduro was. Yet, in Venezuela, the moment the president was removed, what remained of the regime was more than happy to negotiate with Trump if it meant holding on to their power and privileges. So why didn't the Iranian regime do the same? Well, firstly, the supporters of the Iranian regime understood that while the US could hit Iran with airstrikes for months, the likelihood of a full-scale invasion was still pretty minimal. Iran has 3 times the population of Venezuela and has geography that makes it an absolute nightmare for any nation looking to conquer it. Iran isn't just on the other side of the planet to the USA, which immediately makes logistics difficult, but it's located in a region absolutely critical to the world's energy market, where any insecurity leads to immediate global economic volatility. Its major population centres are protected from the most obvious invasion points by hundreds of kilometres of inhospitable deserts and impassable mountain ranges. I've been to this region. It's barren, it's unforgiving, and as unpopular as the regime is, it will be full of hostile combatants, and this is the core difference with Iran. Even if the majority of Iranians would be happy to see this regime overthrown, there will still be tens of millions of Iranians that will defend it with their lives. And they're the ones with the authority, the resources, and the guns. So to start with, you have the Artesh, which is like the regular military, and they have around 350,000 soldiers. Then you have the fiercely loyal Revolutionary Guards, and they rely on the regime for their power and their corrupt privileges, and they number around 125,000 soldiers. Then there's the besieged. They're a militia of volunteers, passionately committed to the protection of the revolution. It has around 300,000 active members, but the number of volunteers are estimated to be well over 1 million. And these are the violent mobs that the regime routinely deploys to violently suppress protests. Now, if they're prepared to kill Iranian civilians to defend the regime, they will gladly kill US and Israeli soldiers. And they will be everywhere. They'll be in every city, in every village, and they will be indistinguishable from civilians. It also needs to be understood that Iran has been a totalitarian state for more than 45 years. That means the clerics have controlled every aspect of public and private life, from schooling to what's reported in the media, and even what conversations can be held in public. Unlike the poorly paid Venezuelan soldiers whose loyalty to the regime was built upon economic populism and personal financial benefit, those loyal to the Iranian regime are raised in a world where they have been taught to chant "Death to America" since they were kids. Murals declaring that the USA is the great Satan have adorned towers across Tehran for decades. This is a country of over 90 million people, fueled by an unholy mix of totalitarianist indoctrination, religious dogma, and genuine cause for significant historical grievance. Now, Iranians are generally very well educated, and they have a proud tradition of celebrating critical thinking, but if you saturate every aspect of life with a specific view of the USA and the West, and that view was illegal to publicly question, then a significant portion of the population will inevitably consume it uncritically. Especially, and again, this is really important to appreciate, especially when the historical grievances these extreme narratives are built upon are so objectively justified and well documented? Now, it is an undisputed fact that the USA orchestrated and funded regime change in Iran in 1953. The CIA don't deny it, they fully acknowledge it. And it was a move that led to decades of suffering under the military dictator king Reza Pahlavi. And when he was finally chased out of the country by huge popular protests in 1979, he fled to the USA, who refused to hand him back over to the Iranians, where he was wanted to stand trial for his crimes against humanity. Now, Israel want to put that man's son in power in Iran. Trump, meanwhile, he's not promising to bring democracy to Iran. He's waiting for someone within the regime to swear fealty to him. Now, why on earth would anyone risk their life to help hand control of the regime to a man who speaks like a mob boss? Just imagine if you heard Trump talk about your country with the same venom he uses against Iran. How many otherwise reasonable people would suddenly find their patriotic side?
But they really are a nation of terror and hate, and they're paying a big price right now.
And all of this hasn't even begun to consider the religious element of this war. Now, again, while millions of Iranians reject fundamentalism, extremist theology is inextricably linked to the identity of the state. Now, within this context, defending the Islamic Revolution is defending Islam. It leans into these Shia doctrines that celebrate martyrdom and promise celestial rewards for those that sacrifice their lives in the name of resistance, especially when the invading force is the USA or Israel. Trump and Netanyahu have now bombarded Iran with more than 16,000 airstrikes in less than 3 weeks. And history is saturated with examples of populations being galvanized by sustained airstrikes, from London to Hanoi, Belgrade, and Kyiv. The pain that is inflicted never turns the people against their own government and almost always increases solidarity, especially as civilian casualties rise. The US and Israel are attempting to systematically hunt and execute any senior leadership figures in the regime that they can find, and it is possible that this may eventually result in a faction taking power willing to negotiate with Trump. But it's incredibly unlikely that this faction will enjoy widespread support, and it's also very unlikely to hold substantially different values to the current regime. And until that happens, the Iranian regime will just continue to wreak havoc on the global economy by shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, while the Iranian people bunker down, wondering if the same destruction that was reaped upon Gaza will soon be coming to their city. Now, nothing I've said is a secret. Any analyst would be able to provide the exact same advice off the top of their head. So, what does that tell us about the people surrounding Trump right now? What does that tell us about Trump's ability to doubt his own convictions or to listen to alternative viewpoints? And what does that tell us about Trump's ability to get himself out of this mess that he's created?